Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by...
At Villere's Florist, we deliver the magic of flowers 7 days a week to the North Shore and South Shore in the New Orleans area. Whether it's for birthday parties, baby celebrations, Villere's provides colorful floral displays for all. With a store full of fresh-cut flowers, exotic tropical flowers, orchids, roses, and even fruit baskets, our goal is to make your vision a reality. Villere's Florist, proudly serving Louisiana since 1969.
Dave Miette Insurance Agency. Auto, home, flood, business, 504-556-0809. Dave Miette, INSagency.com.
For over 48 years, Southern Tires and Auto Repair has provided services across the New Orleans metro area. Southern Tires offers a range of tires for all vehicles and ATVs. We also have a full suite of auto repair options, including brake repair, rim repair, custom exhaust, steering and suspension, tire siping, and so much more. Southern Tires and Auto Repair, 2550 Hickory Avenue in Metairie.
Cnc Drugs is a family-owned pharmacy that's been serving Southeast Louisiana for over 50 years. Whether you need help taking care of an elderly family member, a growing child, or even a pet, Cnc provides patient-centered care for your entire family. Cnc Drugs, large enough to serve you, small enough to know you. Locations in Mandeville and Araby.
Good afternoon and welcome to another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Over the next hour, we'll cover all the home teams for you. Saints, LSU, Tulane. We'll even talk a little bit about the Sun Belt and the big upsets over the weekend. If we have some time, we'll peek into the Pelicans. I just don't know if we'll have time tonight. And of course, we're going back to our original format as we start our 9th season here on WLAE-TV. And of course, that would be a reporters roundtable. I'm so happy again to have two guys that, again, two of the best we have in the city. Guys that, again, know everything about what's going on in sports. And of course, it's Rene Nadeau of CrescentCitySports.com and Guerry Smith of The Wave Report and also NOLA.com. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for coming down this afternoon. A beautiful day here in New Orleans. A little bit of a fall touch outside. Maybe the humidity's down a little bit, but we still got what I think when I came in it was 90 degrees on my on my temperature gauge in the car, but sure does feel nice now with this little cool breeze that we have.
Well, 68 degrees this morning when I woke up, and you know, it felt a little bit fallish.
Yes.
But unfortunately, that evaporated pretty quickly.
Yes, it did. Yes, it did. Before we get started, Rene, tell the folks about CrescentCitySports.com and everything you're involved in.
CrescentCitySports.com, do a lot of recruiting, college football, Saints, anything in between. Still do games, ESPN college football TV analyst, and I also work for CBS and WFAN radio, mostly for Saints and some Pelicans and Sugar Bowl and whatever else going on. So. I'll figure it out sooner or later.
Yeah, he's only been at it for a few decades. Guerry Smith is with me every single Thursday on my radio show, and has been this way now for like 5 years or so. He is a great contributor to the radio show. This is the first time we're having him on the TV show, so welcome on your maiden voyage. You got the most comprehensive website when it comes to Tulane athletics, but tell us all about it and tell us about NOLA.com.
Sure. The Wave Report is my Rivals.com Tulane website. I am right now. You can go there, fresh content. I've talked to the manager of the Kansas State Rivals site, asked him 6-7 questions about Kansas State. Tulane's playing the big game at Kansas State this Saturday. He gives you everything you want to know about Kansas State. You're not going to see that anywhere else. The NOLA.com, writing stories every day, working on a feature right now on Tyjae Spears versus Deuce Vaughn, Kansas State star running back. Deuce Vaughn's one of the best running backs in the country. So is Tyjae Spears. Just people nationally don't know that yet. I think after Saturday, people may know that Tyjae Spears is in that elite company.
No doubt about it. And guys, to tell you right now, check out his website. If you're a Tulane fan, I'm telling you right now, you're on the Wave Report, you're getting out everything secondhand. So again, the Wave Report, of course, he does a great job for NOLA.com. We will start with the Saints today. Guys, 27-26, 12:41 left in the fourth quarter. The largest fourth quarter comeback in the history of the organization. 16 points down, end up beating the Atlanta Falcons by 1. I have been a little bit critical of this team this week. Again, based on what we saw on Sunday, I understand that it is in today's NFL, the first couple games are really, again, where guys are still kind of getting their sea legs. I also understand that, again, the guys do not get a lot of game time now in preseason or in camp because of, again, a lot of coaches don't want to risk their players. Also, you're in a situation where, again, you're not doing a lot of hitting in camp. So I've heard all the excuses. My biggest issue with the Saints on Sunday was dominated in the trenches, and that was the thing that really, again, I took away from the game. With that said, it was a great victory for them to be able to come back. Hopefully, again, now they've gotten those 3 quarters out the way, and we will see, again, the Saints team that as advertised going forward. But I'll start with you, Rene. What were your thoughts on the game?
You know, it's a gritty win. But it shouldn't have come to that. It shouldn't have gotten a situation like that. And the thing is that I'm maybe in a minority, but I really still tell people who disagree with me that you need exhibition games. You need, some people want to do away with them. And I totally disagree with that. This is the reason why you have to have some exhibition games, not only for who's going to be on your roster, but to knock the rust off. I mean, Jameis Winston played a little bit in the last preseason game. But I was a little surprised that the defensive line of the Saints with Cam Jordan and company should have been a strength, and it did not prove out to be the point in that game. The Falcons had their way with them, and I have said all along, contended that I really think the Saints are going to win 9 or 10 games, and I still think that's going to be the case. I don't buy in that now since the Saints come back and against a not a really good Falcons team, first of all, and one that they're gonna get on a string here and run and win 12 or 13 games this year. I still think it's going to be a 9 or 10 win season, and I still believe because of either injury or other reasons, I think we'll wind up seeing Andy Dalton at quarterback more than people realize. And I'm not saying he'll start 9 or 10 games, but I think you'll see Andy Dalton in the lineup as a starting quarterback more than people realize.
Is that, in your opinion, a byproduct of injury or ineffectiveness?
I think both. I think that either because of an injury, because Jameis Winston's history, or he runs and stuff, and he's a possible an injury prospect. For what it's worth, watching practice, Andy Dalton is extremely accurate.
Yes.
And he's been there before.
Right?
Yes. He's very accurate, and he's been there before. I think he came here because it was a spot for him, but I think he also sees an opportunity that he may get some playing time. And again, I don't know how many games, but I think that because of ineffectiveness, I think if Jameis Winston has a 3-interception performance, Andy Dalton's coming in.
Right. Okay. Guerry, your thoughts on the game on Sunday?
The best thing that can be said about it, other than them winning, which was important, is that teams don't play the same way each week. We've learned that because it was very concerning watching the defense, both lines, get pushed around in the first half. That's not a good sign. Those things don't always continue in the NFL. It's a week-to-week league. So that's the best thing that can be said. The other thing that struck me is this was actually incredibly similar to the game the Saints played against the Falcons last year at home, when the Saints were down 24-6 with 8 minutes left and had a much worse quarterback in Trevor Siemian, and came back and took the lead. And that should have been the biggest comeback in Saints history, but the defense blew it and gave up the big play. That ended up costing them a playoff berth at the end of the year.
That's right.
But I thought Atlanta was going to be one of the worst teams in the NFL going into the year, and I'm not convinced they're not going to be now. And that's the concerning point, is that the Saints had to fight so hard and catch some breaks, honestly. They made a lot of their own breaks, but Atlanta had to do what Atlanta does, which is blow games at the end for the Saints to come away with a win, and that's concerning going forward.
You know, guys, I can understand maybe lack of continuity because you don't get a lot of time. Okay, look, let's face it. The most time they got was, again, in the dual practice with Green Bay. I've been an advocate, again, if you're not going to play your starters, let's bring in another team, do 2 of these practices. And so these guys can have at least a controlled practice. But the way they get pushed around the trenches. I mean, that is, especially the defensive tackle position, where the Saints have been stout. 200 yards rushing for the Falcons, 201, 120 for Patterson, I think 76 for Mariota. Now, I understand again, you've got the the read option there, and maybe again, not playing a straight defense, but there's no excuse to get gashed like they did up the middle.
And the thing is, you look at the number 1 draft choices. Cam Jordan, he's still an excellent player and a future Hall of Famer. I mean, you got offensive line. You got 4 number 1s offensive line, and they didn't really do that job. And Davenport, a number 1 draft choice. Right. I just think that the Saints expect and deserve more. Cam Jordan aside, from their number 1 draft choices, and I don't know if the Saints are getting as much out of their number 1 draft choices. Now Trevor Penning is going to be on the shelf for a while. We'll never know what he would have be or what would he be right now. But I just think right now they've kind of leveled off. They're not rising to where they should be for a team with this much experience.
Well, that's troubling. And then on the offensive side of the ball, the inability to be able to pick up the blitz, understand what their assignments were. And I go back to something, Guerry, that again that I guess all of us have talked about. Breeze made the line calls. Breeze came to the line understanding, again, where the blitz was coming from. Well, again, he identified the mic. Now you've got offensive linemen that are doing that. And again, we saw a lot of confusion.
We did.
Okay, and also, again, with Jameis Winston, the ability to be able to, again, pick up the blitz, where it's going from, where the hot read is. Now, look, we're not asking him to be Drew Brees, but he's been in this offense now 3 years. You have to be able to, understand the blitz concepts that the other team are using. They said they were confused. That was troubling, again, especially with an offensive line that, for the most part, that's the line you're going to see all year long, and their inability to be able to pick up the blitz. It wasn't until Atlanta called the dogs off that this team really started to really roll.
And to me, that's a bigger concern. Obviously, if the defense continues to get gouged like that, that's the biggest concern.
Absolutely.
But the history says that's probably not going to happen.
That's an anomaly.
At one point last year, the Saints were on this incredible run of not allowing a 100-yard rusher. I have to see more than one game to believe that they've suddenly fallen apart in that area. But the offensive line was a concern going into the year. And I think a tweet I made during the game, there was one of the sacks Jameis Winston took. Breeze had one of the best internal clocks in the history of the NFL. He knew how long he could hold the ball regardless of what was going around him before he would get rid of it. It didn't mean he was forcing it, but he would throw the ball away if he knew. And there was one sack in particular that Jameis Winston took in the first half where he held it. Oops, there you go, down. And that's a concern for me going forward, is because we've just gotten so used to watching a master in Drew Brees and never letting that happen. He took sacks usually when they got pressure right up the middle, and there was nothing he could do about it. But he never took sacks that he shouldn't have taken, and that's just a big difference that we'll see going forward.
Rene, in your experience, is this fixable on the offensive side? I mean, are we going to see? I mean, when you look at the offensive line, the ability to pick up the blitz. Obviously, again, we're going to see a more exotic blitz this week out of Tampa Bay. Their linebackers are exceptional. Up the middle, when you've got Akeem Hicks and Vita Vea, they're going to be physical up the middle. If you want to say that maybe the weak part of this team, maybe right now would be the guard position. It's going to be interesting to see again how they counteract what Tampa's going to do this week.
I want to say this right.
Okay.
You can't run a mule in a Kentucky Derby, but the thing is that it can be fixed, but you don't know if it'll be fixable to the level that they need it to be fixed. What I mean by that is, how good can these guys be? They're going to be as good as they can possibly be. Can they be coached up? Can Coach Marone and Zach Strief coach them up a little bit and make the offensive line be better? Yes, they can. But can I look at 3 or 4 All-Pros there? No, that's not going to happen. So they're as good. They can get a little better, but how much better can they get? And the coach is going to coach them up a little bit, but again, a mule can't win a Kentucky Derby.
Does that mean they're going to have to start keeping backs in your opinion?
They're going to have to work around this issue all year long. This is not, I agree with him totally, this is not something that's going to be solved overnight. I think they're going to, the offensive line, we saw Alvin Kamara did not do a whole lot in that game and then got injured. That happens when you have an ineffective offensive line. And they're going to have to, again, I think Atlanta was probably one of the worst teams they're going to play.
I agree.
It's early in the year. Sometimes that totally is blown out the window. Maybe Atlanta turns out they're having a good team. But if what I believe is true about Atlanta, this is going to be something the Saints are going to have to make adjustments to work around, because it's hard to win consistently when you're not getting effective blocking.
Right. There's no doubt the skill positions are there. I mean, you look at that wide receiver position, again, how they played, and you look again, which is something I'm hoping to see Carmichael go to, which is more up-tempo. Look, when this offense was at its finest, they were an up-tempo offense. You had the ability to, when Breeze could throw the ball deep, you had shock and awe, where they could take the ball from anywhere on the field and score. Again, they had an offensive line they could protect, but also Breeze, like you mentioned, got the ball out quickly. So again, he made a lot of offensive lines maybe look a little better than maybe they were. But they have the skill position players to probably, again, the best they've had in a long, long time. It's probably the best wide receiver core that they had in the, let's say, even in the Peyton era. When you look at it from starter to, again, the backups they have.
Oh, I mean, Callaway was the guy last year, and now you got Olave, you got Jarvis Landry, and Michael Thomas is back, and and they make. Because of their skills, they are even helping Alvin Kamara be a more productive and a more explosive player. But again, and I can see the Saints winning a game really big. I think they can surprise somebody. I can see this team winning big against a Green Bay. I'm just using that as an example. But I can also see them playing a team that they should beat and blowing it much like they did last week.
Plus, you got Taysom Hill, who, again, once again, all trades and a weapon for this team.
And Taysom Hill was great, and let me say, maybe the best takeaway for me in that game was Michael Thomas in the fourth quarter. Was Michael Thomas. I had my doubts as long as he had been out, but those plays he made, that looked like that was vintage Michael Thomas. And that's a difference maker if he can do that for 4 quarters.
And you covered Jarvis Landry throughout his whole career, and I mean that was no surprise what we saw on Sunday.
He's a tough guy. I talked to him just a few weeks ago, and man, he loves to block. I mean, things that receivers, he don't just outdo it. He loves to block. He's a physical guy, and I remember doing camp. I mean, he's in shells and stuff and yelling at the defensive backs, get away. He's stiff arming and stuff. He's a physical guy. He gives it all he has on the field, and he's a great addition not only in the field but in the locker room too.
Latavius Murray comes on board this week, again with Kamara with the rib issue. I think he's needed anyway. Washington has a little bit of an injury as well. Of course, you've got Ingram, who again is fresh. We'll see how that plays out. They got to have more of a commitment to the run than they had last week, though.
Really do, and Latavius knows the system. He's been here before, so he's a great ad.
Pete Werner. I mean, again, I've been one that, again, politicking for Quan Alexander. My whole premise was, it doesn't matter if you want Pete Werner to be your starter. He's a quality player. If you have an injury, you got another guy you fall back on. But they prove why the Saints are so high on him. 13 total tackles, 12 solo tackles, a tackle for loss, and also, again, a forced fumble. He was outstanding.
He was terrific. More performances like that, the Saints will go a long way towards making the playoffs. I'm not sure he's going to be capable of playing at that level each game, but that was another huge positive that came out of that game, because I wasn't expecting that type of performance.
As long as he stays, I think his biggest problem is just staying healthy, right?
It is. And it's the first time he's been healthy all camp. I mean, he was watching, all the camp. So, but it shows his skills. He can run really well. He diagnoses pretty well. No false steps. He's on it right away. So, he possesses a lot of skills that you're looking for in an NFL linebacker.
Guys, Gardner Johnson traded to the Jets. Of course, this is compounded now with the continued injury to Adebo. Well, again, when I've talked to reporters that were out there, they didn't think it was that severe when he got injured. But here we are again. We're going into week 2, and again, he didn't practice yesterday. Doesn't look like he's going to be available again. That means Roby goes outside. They've got maybe a better cover guy in Evans now at the nickel, but maybe that's not the guy in run support like we saw with Gardner Johnson. I'll take you first, Rene, and I'll let you piggyback on it. Was the loss significant in your mind of a guy that was could help in run support because we saw the type of really gashing that Atlanta did on Sunday?
Yes, it is significant, but it's something that had to be done. I don't think he was going to sign here. He wouldn't have been here next year.
Right.
And I just think the Saints, they had to do something, make a move, and get something for him because he was not going to be here. Yeah, he was not practicing for a while. He in camp. He wanted to sit out and stuff like this. So. They just felt like he had a move, and they didn't get a lot for him, and people are saying, how can you give him away for a draft choice like that? But you got something for him. He was not going to be here, and Justin Evans, did play at Tampa. He was a draft choice and stuff like that. I was impressed. He was one of the guys that grabbed my attention at camp, and I like him. Is he going to be as good as CJ? No.
He's a better cover.
He's a
better cover
guy.
corner. He's just not as good as in run support.
CJ was a physical guy, and he brought it. And man, he was a guy that rallied that secondary.
Right. And then both Quan and him were energy guys. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm going to disagree a little bit, and I just don't think they got enough for him.
No.
First of all, I think the NFL is a year-to-year league. Yes, he may not be coming back next year, but this year, what helps you make the playoffs the most? And this guy's, I'll tell you who's happy he's no longer in the team is Tom Brady.
Sunday.
he doesn't have to have some guy getting in his ear after he throws a pick this week and taunting him. But I feel like they should have kept him. Look, I'm not behind. I understand it's never a good situation when a guy's skipping part of practice and doing that stuff. But I feel like he was fairly popular with his teammates. I don't think he was enough of a disruption on the team that you give away a talent like that and not get much immediate in return, but we'll see how it works out.
And my take has always been he's in a contract year. He is showcasing himself for 31 other teams.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, and at the end of the day, he's going to try to play his best for those 31 other teams. Now, there did something happen last week that that I'm sure the Saints were fearful that he could become a problem when they re-signed McCoy to a long-term deal, and they weren't going to re-sign C.J. Gardner-Johnson. But again, I believe that locker room was strong enough to be able to keep him in check. And also, again, he would be foolish to be a malcontent in a contract year. But it is what it is. He's in New York now. They got to deal with it. The problem is Adebo's injury has really kind of put the defensive backfield in flux.
I mean, he's a real deal. Paulson Adebo is one of the best young cornerbacks in the NFL.
And they're going to need him. Look, this is a tough task this week. Godwin is out, okay? You still have Julio Jones, who's playing at a pretty high level right now. And, of course, we know that, again, it'll be Lattimore matching up against Mike Evans.
And that's always a great matchup.
That's look, Lattimore's a great cornerback. It's still amazing to me what he's done against Mike Evans over the years. Because, the rules make it hard for cornerbacks to cover wide receivers in the NFL. That's just a fact. And the way he's been able to shut down Evans pretty consistently is one of the most. It tells you when Lattimore is focused and ready for a game, he is a truly elite player.
I agree. He's one of the best out there. Although I will say this, could have cost him the game on Sunday. The pass interference, and then of course the retaliation. Because if you go back and look, as I did the game the second time, it was a retaliatory situation with the Atlanta receiver where he got caught. Actually, there was no time left on the clock, and they put 2 seconds back on the clock. And then, of course, the time management situation with the 2 spikes. I don't understand the coach staff's intact, continuity. Somebody in that booth has got to be able to let Dennis Allen know, the guy, he was down by contact. So again, you don't spike the ball. And then I didn't get on third down, not running the ball, getting a better position. It was a 51-yard field goal that was nailed by Lutz, who's nails. But at the same time, taking time off the clock so Atlanta doesn't have time to be able to come back. And they didn't do that. They spiked the ball, and then it's 4th down. I just thought they lost control again of the clock at that point in the game. And that was crunch time.
Yeah, it was. And Dennis Allen, again, is his first real season game.
Yes.
I think he's expressed his concern that we're going to work this out, guys, that he has to be told some things and get a little help. But again, this is maybe a preseason game. It's not, but I'm saying it's that.
Right. And almost it is, right?
And how many times in the NFL, with the way the kickers kick now, do you see a team score with 20 seconds left? And that's too much time. All it takes is one play. One play. Atlanta did it last year, got the bomb and took a chip shot field goal, but all they needed was a decent play this time, and they would have had a much more makeable, realistic
Absolutely.
attempt.
The 63-yard field goal there for Koo, who's one of the best in the league, strong leg. But I will say this. Saints are set. The special teams look like, again, they're really good on the coverage units once again. Gillikin is a weapon at punter. Hardy is a weapon in terms of returning. And again, to have Lutz back, even though again he missed that first field goal, he is a guy that is just clutch. So again, special teams is not something that can be complained about. All right, guys, as we wrap it up here on the Saints, what happens on Sunday?
It's a coin flip almost. I mean, what Saints team is going to show up based on what we saw last week, I wouldn't be too confident. If Tom Brady comes in here and he starts off the game hot, could be a long afternoon for the Saints. I can't sit here and say it's a definite W for the Saints, but the Saints would have to play a whole lot better, not a little bit, a whole lot better than they did last week. The competition is a lot stronger. Tom Brady is a different quarterback than what they faced last week, the receivers, and overall as a team. This is going to be a really tough game, and if I had to call it, I'd have to say after Sunday, the Saints are going to be 1-1.
Right. Tampa knows they've lost the last 4. They went back as far as the last 6. You know, again with the exception of the playoff game. So they're already again all talking about that. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I would pick. This is going to be the one Saints game, home game I'm going to miss this year because I'm going to the Tulane Kansas State game. Couldn't get a flight back early enough, but I've been surprised the way. I mean, the Saints, they've really had their number, obviously. It's been, I mean, Brady's looked terrible a lot of times in regular season games against the Saints. He hadn't looked like that against everybody else. At some point, you've got to feel that's going to change. I would pick Tampa Bay in this game, but certainly the Saints can win it. They're just going to have, but like you said, if the same Saints team showed up in Atlanta, shows up on Sunday, it's an L. To me, it comes down to the trenches. If they can again block the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, especially on the interior with again Akeem Hicks and Veda. Also, again, you know that if Kamara plays, Devin White is one of the best in the NFL. He has the speed to be able to stay with him. That's an issue. David is one of the better linebackers, and they got Shaq Barrett, who's a very good pass rusher. If the offensive line can hold up, I think that's going to give Winston an opportunity to be able to get to his receivers. We'll see how that plays out. On the defensive side of the ball, they got to prove last week was an anomaly, especially inside. They got to be able to stop the run because Fournette is a bull. He's playing well. And then on the flip side, the recipe for success has been able to again get pressure up the middle on Brady. Are they going to be able to do that this week? Now, let's face it. The Tampa's line is in flux. Donovan Smith is not going to play or if he does, he's going to be playing injured with hyperextended elbow. And of course, the interior of that offensive line is brand new, with again either defections or again retirement. So we'll see how that plays out.
Leonard Fournette is coming home, buddy.
Yes, he is.
And don't think he's not excited about having a big game against the home team.
Right, and of course, and look, they hear that they haven't been able to beat the Saints, so we'll see how that plays out. Look, we got to hopefully again last week, even with the win, was again something that we won't see going forward, and we'll see the real Saints team step up this week. All right, our guest today. Again, Rene, Nadeau, CrescentCitySports.com, Guerry Smith of the Wave Report at Newell.com. I'm your host, Eric Asher. We'll take a break. We come back. We'll go into LSU. Then we'll jump into Tulane. Want to talk a little bit about the Sun Belt as well, their big upset weekend. And then if we have some time, we'll touch on Pels. If not, again, we'll touch on those as we get in the camp within the next 2 weeks. So we'll get to the Pels within the next 2 weeks. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports. Here from our underwriters. Stick around.
Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration has been family-owned and operated since 1989. Burkhart has energy-efficient solutions and offers brands such as Mitsubishi ductless AC units and Amana, the only manufacturer with a lifetime unit replacement warranty. Burkhart's offers maintenance bundle packages that include servicing your AC, generator, and tankless water heater. For more information on the services Burkhart's provides, visit acpromise.com. Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration, providing comfort for life.
Experiencing rough weather with a bad roof can be a nightmare. It doesn't have to be.
Suburban Roofing, because when it comes to roofing, there is a difference.
Located at 3701 Iberville Street in Mid-City is Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Open 7 days a week, Katie's offers daily specials for lunch, dinner, and Sunday brunch. Serving New Orleans cuisine such as fried shrimp platters, grilled redfish, and a fully stocked bar. And don't forget about our expanded event seating and local entertainment. Featured on the Best of Food Network's Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives, Katie's Restaurant and Bar.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Rene, Nadeau, and Guerry Smith are our guests. We did have a question about whether the Saints would be able to get pressure on Tom Brady with 4 down linemen. Guys, I think it's a consensus. They have to, right?
Yeah. They have to. It's not can they. They have to,
they have
or
to.
It's going to be a long afternoon.
Brady's still a top quarterback if he's not pressured up the middle. If he's pressured up the middle, he's a 45-year-old quarterback. That's the difference
no
right
doubt.
there.
And they have to do it with 4 down linemen. There's no doubt about it. All right, it was a winning weekend for both Tulane and LSU, both taking on HBCU schools. Of course, LSU defeated Southern 65-17. This was more about Baton Rouge, the pageantry again that went along with the bands getting together. It was really a huge day for the city of Baton Rouge. First time LSU had ever played a HBCU school, and it was Southern. But it was an overmatch. Let's face it, just the size of LSU, the speed of LSU against Southern, and it really showed a lot. Like I said, the best thing that happened outside of Baton Rouge celebrating it was a lot of guys got to play.
Well, it was a band concert and the game broke out. I mean, really, that's what it was. It was a band concert that a lot of people came to, and they happened to have a game afterwards. And the thing is, this was a glorified scrimmage for LSU. A lot of people got to play, some walk-ons, and guys got to play and knocked off some rust, and guys took a week off. B.J. Ojolari, among others, took a week off and, waited till the SEC competition begins this week. But you got to see some things, and got to see Garrett Nussmeier and see what he can or cannot do.
Right.
And I think it proved some of the things that you wanted to see some players and what they can and cannot do. Yeah. And it kind of solidified and proved that some of the decisions Brian Kelly and staff made are, in fact, the right ones.
Right. Gary, you and I talk about this all the time. I think LSU should play all the state teams. I mean, Burton is the one that started that. I'd love to see a Tulane LSU football. Again, a home and away. I like the fact that they're playing again the state schools now instead of bringing in a Troy or something like that. So again, even though again there was an overmatch there, I'm glad that the game happened.
Yeah, well, if you talk to the Southern people, they were thrilled. They didn't care. They knew what the result was going to be. So yeah, I'm not. In terms of watching, I'm not into these type of games because you really don't learn anything. I covered Tulane Alcorn State, same thing on Saturday, but I think it was good for the city of Baton Rouge to have that game for the first time, and we'll learn about LSU this Saturday.
Yeah, exactly. Now let's talk about this Saturday. Well, Jaden Daniels is now the starter. I don't think there's any doubt now, based on what we saw on Saturday. He seems to be progressing every single week. What are your thoughts?
I didn't think he'd be this good this soon. I really didn't, and he's proven me wrong. And the thing is that without Jaden Daniels, he's been an element. A team playing against LSU has to play 11 on 11 now because Jaden Daniels, you have to spy him or make sure someone is aware or cognizant of what he can do because he can take off and run. He's shown a little more patience both against Southern and Florida State. The last drive against Florida State was classic. And he's shown some better accuracy, some better decision making. The offensive line still moving people around and trying to find the right combination for the quintet. Receivers, off the chart. You got some of the best receivers, and not only in the SEC, but in the country. Right. Keishawn Butte is a top 10 draft pick for this coming draft. And the running back situation, John Emery is expected back this week. I don't think he'll play a lot. I think he'll maybe get 10 touches, if that. So, I mean, for people who are thinking John Emery's going to come back and get 25 touches against Mississippi State, it's not going to happen. So I think they're still going to go with Noah Cain and Goodwin. The thing is, LSU has to be concerned. I did a story on this. Will Rogers is trying to prove why he is among the elite quarterbacks in the SEC, and he is very good. But he's got some chinks in the armor, and the thing is that LSU has to get pressure on Will Rogers if they can. He saw bad habits throwing off his back foot. He is not a running threat. He averages maybe 3 yards a carry, 3.1. But he's very accurate in the 74-75%. And he's got some good receivers. And I'll tell you what he's got. Jaquavius Marks, a running back, is 50 catches away from being an all-time leading receiver at Mississippi State, which they've had some pretty good receivers. So they're going to use the running backs quite a bit in a passing game, and that's going to spread things out, make the linebackers be cognizant of if somebody's in the flat, and they're going to use, Mike Leach is going to use this offense as much as possible and spread out the air raid, but Will Rogers is capable of really lighting it up, and if LSU cannot get pressure on him with 4, much like the Saints, it could be a long afternoon.
And of course, you're doing that without Mason Smith, too.
Yes.
Which is huge. The offense, we'll see this week against Mississippi State. Really, this is an SEC type lines on both sides. So the offensive line match it up against that defensive line of Mississippi State, and then vice versa with LSU's defensive line match it up against Mississippi State's offensive line. We saw a little bit of that with Florida State. This is kind of, in my opinion, a step up in class. Your thoughts on again, do they have the physicality to hang?
Not sure, but it's funny. Rene mentioned if an LSU running back may be getting 10 touches, that would be twice as many touches as any Mississippi State running back. Because I've watched a lot of Mike Leach, because I'm partial to coaches who are at the total extremes. I just like watching his teams play, and I've never seen a coach that's more committed to not running the football than that coach. And I agree. The key is going to be if you pressure his quarterbacks. He rarely has running quarterbacks. If you pressure them, you win, and if you don't pressure them, then you better score a lot of points because they're going his system.
We saw it a couple years ago, right?
He's a savant in terms of play calling, in terms of his system. Nobody does that system, that short passing game, as well as he does. I find it interesting. LSU's an underdog at home in this game by a couple of points. I think pretty much every game LSU is going to play in the SEC this year is going to be the same. It's going to. I don't remember a year like this. On paper, it's going to be a toss-up, except for the Alabama game, and maybe, hey, the way Alabama played against Texas, that might not be off the table. But so. This season could go in every direction possible for LSU, and this is a huge one to get off on the right foot. I will say this, and again, I've watched a lot of Mike Leach. He's a savant in play calling. He is maybe one of the worst game management timeout coaches I've ever seen in my life. When he was at Washington State, I watched him. By the fourth quarter, they never had any timeouts left. He had no idea how to run a 2-minute drill, which is funny because his offense is a 2-minute drill.
Drill.
But he takes a lot. His teams don't usually hurry up, and so if LSU, let's put it this way, if LSU can win the physicality battle, which you asked me up front, I think they'll win the game because there's a lot of things that Mike Leach doesn't do well. But the one thing he really does well, if you're not getting pressure on his quarterback, you're going to come up on the short end.
Why don't you take it to offense, defensive lines, the matchup there?
Well, and the thing I will say this. Matt House is going to have to bring pressure from somewhere off the edge and take a chance and put man-to-man coverage, and hopefully they'll get there on time. But the offensive and defensive lines, LSU offensive line now, they made a change a little bit, and Gellinger went from center to guard.
Which is probably his natural position, right?
His natural position. I mean, it was really tough for him against Florida State doing that. You got Frazier at one tackle, at one guard, I'm sorry. Bradford is 360 pounds. And he could be, if he put it all together and lost a few, he could be the best offensive lineman there. And Will Campbell, wow, what a freshman season.
Turner's your
Turner is the center now, and he's added him. He's 295, so he's probably added about 60 pounds.
And that's a position he's comfortable with.
He's comfortable, and he is a center.
Right.
And so I think they were trying to make Dellinger a center, and it's kind of tough. In a game at practice is one thing, but Matt House is going to have to bring pressure from somewhere, from a linebacker, or, like I said, a corner blitz or something, and just, if he can get to 4, blitz with 4, that's fine. You get pressure with 4, but it's going to be imperative that he does that. And I'm going to tell you what, if Mississippi State has early success, LSU's going to be playing on their heels. I mean, I'm talking about if Mississippi State were to get up by maybe 10 points or 12 points or whatever it may be, wow, that's going to be tough road to hoe for the Tigers.
Well, I'll tell you what concerns me about LSU, and I agree with him that Jaden Daniels has been a revelation, and that could be a factor going down the road because I didn't think he stays healthy. If he stays healthy, I didn't think he would be this good. But I don't think FSU is a very good football team. I cover the American Athletic Conference. Their coach Mike Norvell came from Memphis. I thought it was a poor. I thought there were a lot better coaching candidates out there. And this does not come because I'm a Florida grad. To just get that out there. But I thought that was a questionable choice. I'm not sure FSU is back because they beat LSU. Right. Obviously, it's the first game of the year. A lot of things happen. True. But I'd be sort of like with the Saints with Atlanta. It just the fact that LSU was even in position where they had to make a great comeback to give themselves a chance to win at the end concerns me a little bit going forward. Not long term, but in the first year of a new coaching staff, that I don't know if I don't think FSU would be finishing in the top half of the SEC. Let's put it that way.
It's a foundation year. There's no doubt about it. I will say this. This is where we're going to find out a lot about the secondary. This air raid offense. This is a secondary that really is a secondary of a lot of transfers in. They've tried some of these guys they believe are SEC caliber. I think we'll find out this weekend.
Oh yeah, and Jay Ward and company and Fouché and Mekhi Gardner. I mean, yeah, it's going to really be a test to them if they can stay with those receivers. And they have some pretty good receivers. And the thing about Mississippi State, they have big receivers, 6'2", 6'5".
Right.
So, they have some big physical, 200 pounds, 210. And again, Jaquavius Marks is a guy who gets out in space and he's electric. He's not as good as Tyjae Spears, but I'm saying he's very similar.
Right.
Jaquavius Marks, once he gets out in space and open, he can make a lot of problems for the defense. And they're going to try to isolate him, get him out in space a little bit. Will that mean that a linebacker or a nickel guy will have to keep track of him? But Leash is going to spread it out, and he's going to take chances, he's going to take risks, and he feels very confident with Will Rogers that this is the guy who can do it, tight throws and things like this. So he's going to take, Leash is going to take chances, I think, early in the game. And Guerry's seen him a lot more than me, but I think he's a guy that from the get-go, man, let's go, let's throw it up, let's take chances, and air it out.
Yep, I would agree. Who do you like on Saturday?
Toss up. I'd say the home field advantage I think will help LSU. And Guerry and I were talking before the show. Brian Kelly is very similar in a lot of ways to Nick Saban. Very organized.
Yes, very.
And he made a statement when he came in, maybe not in these exact words, but this is what we need you to do, and if you can't get on board, we will miss you. But he is very organized. He expects the players to own what they're doing. Reports, on their schoolwork every day and their workouts and what they eat and everything else. And he's brought a little bit, in a way, of Nick Saban to the table, and that he's very organized, his expectations, and he's changed a couple of things and maybe ruffled some feathers among LSU in a small way, but he's got he knows what he's got at hand, a task at hand, and he knows what kind of team he has, how good and how bad they could be, or potential, what the potential of this team is. So I think this team is certainly capable of a winning season, but Brian Kelly has a good handle on what he's got.
Right. Yeah, I lean LSU, not with a lot of confidence, and I've watched Will Rogers a lot. I'm still not sure whether he's a system quarterback or a really productive quarterback. I mean, because you're going to lead the nation in passing if you play for Mike Leach, and you're going to look great sometimes when receivers are open. But his quarterbacks, there's a big difference. When he has the right quarterback, his teams are a lot different. Because when he doesn't have the right quarterback, when things start breaking down, that's when the 4 interceptions come out of nowhere. We just don't know enough about this LSU team yet with the new system to know what's going to happen. But LSU, from top to bottom, I think is a more talented team than Mississippi State, and I do think Mike Leach makes mistakes in close games a lot of times. Brian Kelly, he won a little bit in Notre Dame when he was there, so I lean LSU, but with no conviction.
You got a final word?
Not really. I just think it's going to be a game that special teams and the punting or field goal or overall coverage is going to make. It's going to be a game that something like that could make a difference.
Let's talk Tulane. We'll start with you on Tulane. Obviously, you're again the beat writer for the Reno.com. Your website Wave Report is again the most comprehensive look at Tulane athletics, and I would encourage any Tulane fan out there to subscribe. 2-0, huge win, obviously, again over UMass, and then of course an expected win over HBCU Alcorn State. I tell you every week, I am just. Look, a Tulane fan since I was a kid, okay? And I've seen a lot of Tulane teams. The skill positions on this team right now, I think are the best I've seen in my lifetime. When you look running back and you look at depth, you look at wide receiver, you look at depth, you look at the tight end position, you look at depth, and then of course the quarterback in depth. Why don't we start there first? Because I think that again, if they get time, if Pratt gets time, they could be terrific.
Yeah. Well, we talked about the Saints, how much they've improved at wide receiver this year, where basically their 1, 2, 3 guys last year are 4, 5, 6 now. Tulane, maybe even a more dramatic difference. I've never seen more improvement at one position than Tulane has at wide receiver this year. Now, they got to prove it against a better team, but I said last year, I think Tulane might have had the worst wide receivers in terms of performance in the FBS. They couldn't catch, they couldn't get open, with the exception of Shea Wyatt, who was a Division II transfer, and boy, was he a godsend to come to this program. The other guys just didn't play well. This year, it's a totally different story with Lawrence Keys, local kid, went to Notre Dame, big-time recruit, came back to Tulane. Just his practice habits, the way he plays, he's galvanized everybody else to get better. Day-Day McDougal, Maryland transfer, played with Michael Pratt at high school. Michael Pratt knew him. He came in. Those two guys, they're just on a different level, and the receivers that are returning, Deuce Watts, who's been inconsistent, he's been better. Jaquan Jackson had a rough year last year because of a knee injury. He's better, and Shea Wyatt has gotten even better. I mean, I'm telling you, I don't want to hear anybody saying that lower level players can't succeed when they move up, because this guy, he did it all at Central Missouri, and I was not expecting him to make a huge contribution last year. He may be their best receiver out of the whole group. He had a terrific game against Alcorn State. So a tremendous weakness has become what appears to be a strength. And
I agree.
We've already talked about Tyjae Spears. I think he's one of the best running backs in the country. They've been hiding him since the first quarter of the UMass game. He's going to get a heavy workload. He had 264 yards against Memphis in the last game of the regular season last year. Now, Kansas State's a much better defense than Memphis, but they're going to rely on him heavily this Saturday. And Michael Pratt, in his third year as a starter, you can tell the difference with all the reps he's gotten in the first 2 years. His accuracy has gotten better. His decision-making has gotten better. So I agree with you. With Tulane, it always comes down to, can the offensive line hold up, and that.
How do you feel about that? I mean, Kansas State, you stepping up. This is a Big 12 lines on both sides.
Yeah, it's not going to be easy. Look, Kansas State has better players from top to bottom than Tulane. They're in the Big 12. They have a good coach. They've not consistently been a contender yet under Chris Kleiman in his fourth year at that program, but Tulane's. We just don't know. Now, two transfers that Tulane got in, their two starting guards make a huge difference. Prince Pine started a few games at Baylor for a Sugar Bowl team 3 years ago, went to Sam Houston State, started like 22 games in 1 year because they played 2 seasons.
That's right.
He's throwing his 360-pound body around and being effective. And then Kanan Ray played at Colorado. He's also, that helps. If those guys can play well, Sincere Haynesworth is a superb center in the middle. That'll make a huge difference. But I'm not sure. Yeah, look, I think this is a pretty darn good team. I don't think that last year's 2-10 team was representative. But let's face it, any of Willie Fritz's teams would have started 2-0 against the first two teams they played. So we'll find out this Saturday how much they really are better than not last year. They're definitely better than they were last year. But the 3 previous years when they were 6-6 in that range, they've got to be better than that to have a chance to beat Kansas State.
Rene, why don't you piggyback on and really talk about the skill position players, and then get into the line, if you would. Then we'll go to the defense.
Well, you know, and every year on Crest City Sports, I always name a top Louisiana team, colleges from all over and stuff. And I tell you, there's a argument you can make for Cecilia Haynesworth as the best offensive lineman in college football in the state of Louisiana.
Wow, really?
Yeah. Oh, I think so. If you look at, I know he's a center and everything, but if you look at what he does and how good he plays and everything, and how consistent he is, you can make a case out of him being, if not the best, one of the top 2 offensive linemen in college football in Louisiana. Ray and Pines are guys that, boy, I tell you, Tulane has done so much with the transfer portal. You talk about LSU built this year. Tulane did a great job bringing in keys, and the pieces fit together. And then, and Guerry knows this better than I, but Lummy Young and Monroe Kid and the secondary from Nichols. And to build on that, you got the 2 best linebackers, Dorian Williams and Nick Anderson, that you can make an argument that they're not only the best duo in the conference, but one of the best duos in the country in college football because of the way they play. No, I mean because they are very productive. They play well together. You look at their numbers. They put up the numbers that good linebackers put up. But again, Willie Fritz has done a great job. A little luck may have played a role, but the pieces have come in and fit the puzzle. And really, Day-Day McDougal is a guy, again, that played with Pratt. He's come in from Maryland and Lawrence Keys, and they're just not occupying a spot. They are key contributors. And that's, you can contribute that success to, to Willie Fritz and his staff for really looking at the transfer portal and coaching these guys in and making them mesh as a team and the team, accepting these guys as transfers. And and he knows it better than I, but it looks like it's a very harmonious situation.
And that was huge for this team, because let's face it, in the modern college football era with NIL and stuff like that, you can recruit well at Tulane, but you're not recruiting the top line guys guys out of high school directly. You need them to come to you after they've gone somewhere else, and he does seem to have hit the jackpot this year. And the one guy we haven't even talked about yet because he hasn't done much is Shotty Clayton. He was I don't cover high school in New Orleans, but the people who do tell me he was one of the best running backs they ever saw.
32 touchdowns his senior year.
Yeah.
32 touchdowns.
And he was injured for part of the year.
Yes.
He did it in like a short time.
I think 2,300 yards.
And he could be key because Cameron Carroll is out for this game. He has a foot injury. He had surgery yesterday. So look, they're going to rely on they may need Shotty Clayton to come up big. They're going to rely on Spears in this game. But if he gets injured or if anything else happens, Shotty Clayton, he's a guy who talks about he feels like he can play in the NFL. This would be a great opportunity for him to get a chance and start showing people what he can do.
That's why I said it's not hyperbole again when I say that the skill positions on this team may be the best I've seen in my lifetime. Okay, and when you look at depth, quality of the players, and I agree with both you guys. You know, a second opportunity to come home. And Rene, we talked about this on previously on the radio show. You and I have talked about this. Tulane is right there now, where again, if this works out for these players, this could be a pipeline now for players that go elsewhere, want to come back home and go play at Tulane.
I agree.
and guys see this. Well, from New Orleans, you got a lot of players from New Orleans area, playing all over the country right now. Patrick Jenkins is coming in and really contributed. Guy from John Ehret, TCU transfer, he's coming and done a good job. And guys are going to talk, and guys are going to see things, and the coaches can say, this. If you're talking to a transfer portal candidate, this is what happened when this guy came in here and stuff like this. Transfer portal is going to be huge. And I've been saying this for a couple of years now. Just as a national signing day, I'm really expecting somebody to find a way to make money. There's going to be a transfer portal signing day. And it's going to be like a national holiday, I'm telling you.
Well, guys, when you look at Tulane, and you look at, again, the opportunity to be able to bring these guys on a transfer portal, I mean, LSU's done it. They've done it. If you work it right, you can turn around a program very, very quickly.
Really can. And I'll say this. I was holding my breath. I was really afraid that Michael Pratt would get a quarterback, would get some offers, and he'd be gone. I mean, the way he took a beating last year. And I tell you, I'm glad. I know Willie Fritz is glad to have him back, because that would have been really, really tough blow for Tulane to lose him.
Yeah, and it's a testament to the character of the team and just the culture that Willie Fritz has built. Because you show me another 2-10 team that slipped off a 6-6 season before that and lost almost nobody to transfer. They lost one guy. They lost Jeffrey Johnson, and he started for 4 years and participated in senior day last year. He thought he was going pro. Realized that wasn't going to work out. It's hard to turn down an offer to become a starter at Oklahoma. That's the only guy of significance that they lost, and they got like 10 guys in, and from a 2-10 team. That tells you all you need to know about what they believe in.
And Rene, you know this better than anybody, because you write about this all the time. Per capita, I read this the other day. There's no city in America that puts more players into the NFL than New Orleans.
Yeah, okay? I do it every year.
St. Augustine also, as a high school, there's no school in the country that puts more players in the NFL than St. Augustine High School.
St. Augustine has put since they opened the doors, like 47, 48 players in the NFL.
Right.
And I mean, that's unbelievable. And Shaw's another one that's put a lot in there. I mean, it's just a lot of schools have put them in. But you looking at, on a annual basis, I talk about training camp, because once training camp ends, guys on the practice squad, it's hard to keep up with them. But in training camp this year, there were like 37 or 38, maybe 39 players who prepped in New Orleans who on NFL rosters. And it could be as high as 40 to 42, but you're always in that 38, 39, 40 players from the greater New Orleans area. And you think about the Peyton Mannings and the Ed Reeds and guys like this, Leonard Fournette, there's a lot of players that leave the area and go play at San Diego State or Colorado or here and there. And you know, you kind of lose track of them and all, but it's a credit to the skill set and the want-to and desire that the players have, and the coaching at high school level that they
I agree. And that leads me back to, again, where we're talking about transfer portal. Tulane having an opportunity to be able to bring these guys back a second time. A lot of these guys will be playing on Sunday. I do want to ask, before we move on to the Sun Belt, Kansas State is tough. I read your article in the Times-Picayune-Noel.com about Deuce Vaughn, Martinez, the wideout, their wide receivers, and of course they can run and throw the ball very, very effectively.
Right. Yeah, the key is going to be can Tulane stop the run. And it's going to come down to the defensive line. Let me quickly mention one player who did not come to Tulane, a local kid from a pretty good program that chose Tulane out of high school, Angelo Anderson. He was a huge deal when he signed with Tulane. Has not had a breakout game yet, and he's in his third year. He started against Alcorn State after coming off the bench. He's going to start this week. He needs to, if he can live up to his clippings when he came out of high school. Last year he got sick. He played at 230 pounds trying to play at defensive end last year. That ain't going to happen. He's almost up to 270 now. He's big enough now that you can play. He still has speed. If he could have a breakout performance this weekend, that'll be a huge deal, because that's the one area I'm just not sure how Tulane's defensive line is going to match up with Kansas State's running game. If Tulane wins that battle, excellent chance to pull off the win.
All right, guys, the rubber hits the road here. Tulane, Kansas State.
Yeah. I can't pick Tulane at this point. Willie Fritz has never beaten a Power 5 conference team. He's come close many times against Oklahoma last year. It's a road game. I think top to bottom, Kansas State's a little more talented. They've got Deuce Vaughn's one of the best running backs in the country, but I don't think it's out of the question. The line opened at 17 points this week, which surprised me, but it's down to 14, which means most of the betting public thinks that was an off line. So it's not like Tulane has no chance, but I have to see it first, Tulane beat a team like that before I can pick it.
Rene?
Still a line from Buddy DiLiberto, the Russians would have to land in Kenner. I mean, for something like that to happen, or it would have to snow in July.
I don't live too far from Kenner, so let's get the Russians out of there.
But I just think that Willie Fritz could keep it close and all, but I think the skill of the players is going to wear him down.
Right. Guys, I just want to throw congratulations out to the Sun Belt, which are headquartered here in New Orleans. They dominated in week 2. Marshall beat Notre Dame at South Bend. Wow. App State beat A&M in College Station. Georgia Southern went to Nebraska in Lincoln and beat Nebraska, so much so that Scott Frost is out as the head coach. Shaw's own Mickey Joseph is now the interim head coach at Nebraska. Big weekend for the Sun Belt. Got about a minute for each guy.
Chase Bryce, really good quarterback for Appalachian State. A lot of people don't know how good he is, but he's really good. And Raheem Ali from Marshall, one of the best running backs in college football. He had a tremendous year as a true freshman last year, and he's good. And as he goes, that Marshall Thunder and Herd, Charlie Hoff's done a great job. He was in the New Orleans Bowl last year.
Yes.
He's done a really good job. He's a good head coach at Marshall.
Right.
You know what? You know who should be chapped a little bit is American Athletic Conference followers, because that conference expanded last year, and the politics comes into this because the Sun Belt and the American Athletic Conference are ESPN leagues, and Conference USA is not. So they rated 6 teams from Conference USA to try to destroy that league. The Sun Belt has become a heck of a football league. This was a joke of a league just a few years ago. It is now. You could make a case that it's better than the American Athletic Conference at the
especially
moment.
next year when you get the defections.
And they had an opportunity to take some of these teams, and they didn't take any because of ESPN was sort of dictating who they take, and they didn't want that. They didn't want another league they had hurt by that deal.
Right.
And so, I mean, look, that was an incredible weekend. For no league like that has ever had a weekend like the Sun Belt just had.
It really was special, no doubt about it. That's interesting. Had no idea that ESPN had their tentacles in that. That is the first I've ever heard of that.
Yeah, that's and that's why. And I don't think the commissioner wanted to expand by 6 teams either. That's a little too many. I mean, why are they bringing Rice into the league? North Texas is okay. I mean, I'll buy UTSA. They're an up and coming program. I'll buy UAB. Maybe even Florida Atlantic, but Charlotte and Rice and North Texas, they were trying to destroy Conference USA, and the big winner, I think, in all this is the Sun Belt.
They definitely showed it, and of course, still headquartered here in New Orleans. And of course, tie in with again the New Orleans Bowl as well. Rene Nadeau, CrescentCitySports.com, Guerry Smith of again Noel.com, and the Wave Report. Make sure if you're a Tulane fan, you subscribe to the Wave Report. Gentlemen, thanks so much for your time today, especially on our inaugural show, going back to our original format. It's been a blast.
Always great to be here. It's great to be with Guerry.
There you go.
Thanks
you guys
for having me on. Appreciate
Always.
it.
And of course, Guerry will be with us this afternoon talking Tulane on the radio show. All right. Wow, what a great show. Okay, so many ways to be able to catch our program. Again, you can look at the QR code on your screen right now. Again, click on that with your phone. It'll take you to my website, ericasher.com, or the WLAE-TV YouTube page. But again, there are so many ways to catch our program. It should be up on the screen for you right now, all of our rebroadcasts. And of course, it's always on the WLAE-TV YouTube page and always at ericasher.com. You catch me on the radio 4 to 6 weekdays on 106.1 FM Nash Icon. You can listen live at ericasher.com, or the TuneIn Radio app, the iHeartRadio app. Also, again, our podcast is on the Anchor app or on all podcasting platforms, so you can catch the radio show there. I want to thank the underwriters who make this show possible, each and every one of them. We appreciate each and every one of them. Please support our underwriters. They're the reason why this show is on the air, and we thank them very, very much. We also thank the WLAE production staff, including Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, Logan Graffia, also Alex Chacon, and my director, William Hill. For Rene, Nadeau, and Guerry Smith, I'm Eric Asher. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you next week for another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports.